Fellow female activists, hello, wellness clip today, and we are in nourishment, and we're talking about the 80-20 rule for your meals. All right, so Cathy is here, your wellness coach, and if you're new here, hi, hello, like and subscribe, and you are probably a activist and you are feeling exhausted. We all are, but we are here to help you. Oh, let me take off my glasses because I don't need those right now, as I'm just going to be speaking to you. But anyway, so what we're going to do right now is what we call our positive quotient repetitions, or PQ reps. And that is to get us centered, to get us out of the external distractions and bring us into our internal knowing, okay? Really enjoy being centered. All right. So if you feel safe, you can close your eyes. Preferably you're in a quiet spot where you can be secluded. Whatever, though, as long as you feel safe, feel free to close your eyes. And what I want you to do is we're going to focus on our breath, okay, but not change it. So with a nice tall spine, what do you feel when you're breathing? What parts of your body are moving? Now, we're actually going to change our breath. So we're going to inhale through our nose and then exhale through our mouth slowly, at least for 4 counts, and notice what is moving in your body. So here we go. Inhale, and then count as you blow out. 4, 3, 2, 1. What did you notice about your body? Go ahead, inhale again. And with the count of 4, exhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. And one more time, inhale. And exhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. Notice your breath again, not changing it. You might be surprised it's actually slower, right? Than when you first started. So even though you're not changing your breath, you helped it slow down. Think about what that has done to your parasympathetic nervous system. You've activated that. And now your mind and your body feel safe. And that's what we want. So go ahead and lower your chin a little. Or blink your eyes open if they were closed. So that is what we call positive quotient repetitions, or PQ reps. And I can help you and your organization actually learn how to utilize that awesome type of tool like daily. All right, so today we are talking about nourishment. That is the subcategory. And we're talking about the 80-20 rule. So the 80-20 rule can apply to anything, okay, to include your life. In this case, we're talking about meals, okay? So you'll never hear me talk on this channel about, oh, I mean, I will explain what macros and, macros and micronutrients are, but it's not the focus of what I'm here for. More importantly, is I'm sharing with you common sense tips that can help nourish you, okay? Nourishment has so many levels, and that is why I chose the word instead of nutrition. No, I want you to think about how you nourish your whole body, okay? And food is just one way to do it, right? Or consumption of, internal consumption, right? So the nourishment should come, again, using the 80-20 rule. So for anyone who has, been alive for, at least past year 5, probably has heard about the 80-20 rule. And you can look it up yourself. Feel free to Google it. But it's basically a universal kind of concept. And it comes down to 80% of what gets done happens 20% of the time, meaning we can focus 20% of our time and get 80% of the results. So with that said, okay, and it can work in reverse, right? Like, in other words, it happens all the time with, events, right? You work for hours and hours and days and months, but in the last 20% of the time left before that event, 80% of what needs to get done gets done, and it's like, oh man, but that's just how the universe works, okay? So the 80-20 rule, according to your meals, okay, how you can think about all your meals, whether you meal prep, whether you, are a last minute type person. I personally love the batching idea. So I batch my life. The 80-20 rule. Whenever I can batch, any parts of areas of my life, I will. Why? Because it saves me time later on. In the idea of meals, okay, what I'm trying to get at here is 80% of the time, let's do the best we can to nourish ourselves with food that we know is going to help us along. What do I mean? So if you have a choice between, okay, a really awesome balanced macro meal, meaning it has protein, fats, fiber, carbs, right, in the optimal levels, then yeah, that's awesome. Versus, let's say, I don't know what they call the very large version of a drink at, like, say, Starbucks or, any other of your, pick your evil coffee. I say evil because caffeine and me don't mix. So you don't want to see Cathy on caffeine. It's not pretty. But with that said, choose whatever latte, sugar type of drink you can think of. Okay. So you're choosing that over the actual real food that has a balanced macro and micro ratio to it. Okay. That's what I'm talking about. So 20% of the time, okay, I'll give you the grace and you can go off the rails. And 80% of the time, let's choose the more balanced real food that's going to nourish your body. Everyone needs their little vices, right? And I'm not here to tell you not to, right? Now, I will honestly always say it is best that you do not pick up any type of tobacco products, right? It's in your best interest to stay away from alcohol as much as possible. I'm under the camp that you should not drink alcohol at all. No consumption of alcohol. And that's just me. But there is now scientific evidence to say so. It was actually the alcoholic industry who had science try to say otherwise. But we all know that that's not true. So with that said, I'm not telling you to not, okay, drink alcohol if that's something that you partake in. I am telling you should never smoke. I mean, there is no way in God's green earth that you're going to tell me that any type of tobacco product is good for you. What I am going to say again, there's a reason, just so you know, that you can't use nicotine. Hello. When you're in the Olympics, it's a narcotic. All right. So I'm sorry. Let me get back to what I was saying here. So yes. So 80-20 rule. The 80-20 rule, again, applies to all parts of your life. And it probably shows up more than anything when you are, in fact, deciding what to eat. Now, would I propose that maybe you try batch cooking? I do. Or some type of meal prep program, right? Why? Because that means that 80% of the time, you don't have to worry about what you're going to eat. And then let's say that meal prep service only gives like dinners. Okay, let's say that actually makes sense because it's easier to make better choices throughout your waking hours instead of waiting and trying to decide what to do towards the end of your waking hours. Why? Because our willpower is absolutely tied to the time of day or night that it is. Meaning, our evolution, okay, is such that we theoretically as humans should be awake during the sun time, okay, when the sun's out, and we theoretically should be asleep when it's dark. Now, I know obviously there are those who work, night shifts. Okay. The 80-20 rule still applies, and even more so because you are working, unfortunately, against evolution's own biological clock. Okay. And so you, more than anyone, get to really nourish your body when you are awake, again, when you should be asleep. And again, I'm not here to tell you, oh, you need to totally change, our world, unfortunately, right, runs 24/7. So there are people who are up at night, right, when others are asleep. So with that in mind, always think about, okay, the 80-20 rule. So yes, I am not going to ever say give up chocolate. I am a chocoholic and I am proud of it. And I don't eat chocolate every day. Now I could, I just, it doesn't really necessarily come up when I see it, right? If it's elsewhere and I'm around it, yes, I'm going to partake in it. And I know that, it is just what it is. But 80% of the time, I'm not consuming it. Again, not because necessarily I don't like it, it's not usually something I buy. And so the 80-20 rule will always apply. But the 80-20 rule is actually something that gives you grace as well. It's a concept that helps you realize as humans and in the universe, we're not perfect, okay? There are so many nuances to how we react, okay, from moment to moment, correct? And so the 80-20 rule, when it comes to your nourishment, 80% of the time, let's take a week, okay? Let's look at it from a week's point of view. When you are, in the hustle and bustle of, social justice and fighting fascism, I want you to be at your best. And I don't want you to have to use outside forces to revitalize, okay? I want you to gain on-demand energy on your own, and I can show you how. But also, if you're using the 80-20 rule, you know that, okay, if I know in a week's time I'm going to have a really, really heavy schedule, then I best plan, okay, I'm going to take my lunch 3 days out of the week because I know I'm not going to leave my desk or I'm not going to, wherever, whatever the case is, versus just winging it because that's not going to work. You want to be nourished the best you can to fight fascism. And so that means planning ahead at some point, okay? So in the event, let's say that you unfortunately feel like you need to pull an all-nighter or whatever that looks like to you, right? You're working more than you prefer, or that is normal for you, let's say. Guess what? If you can at least use the 80-20 rule to say, okay, I know that at 3 a.m. I should be asleep, but I'm not going to be because I'm going to be setting up for something that's going to happen tomorrow. Guess what? Try to, if you're, feeling like you need to be picked up, i.e., you need caffeine of some sort, why not choose something as easy as, okay, I'm going to go with the tea, okay? In some cases, it can be, Earl Grey tea or whatever. What I'm getting at is pick the tea that has caffeine versus the sugary, overladen, scary sports drink, i.e., what they call energy drinks, right? I'm not getting, I believe in, electrolyte fueled, liquids. What I don't appreciate are the ones that are just pure sugar, okay, and caffeine. No, you need to have natural occurring substances in your body instead of anything that's just going to jack up your heart rate. That's not what we want. So again, it doesn't take a lot to use the 80-20 rule and realize, okay, you're not perfect, and that's okay. But the 80-20 rule can, more times than not, help you make decisions that will help you throughout the waking hours and say, okay, if I know down the road today that I'm going to be really super busy, how about I have a really, really grounded breakfast and lunch, and then, I'll just give it to the 20% that I'm going to screw up and eat, whatever I'm going to eat when I get the chance during the event, right? So again, the 80-20 rule is really helpful because it reminds you, I'm not trying to be perfect. All I'm trying to do is make sure that whatever nourishment I do find and get into my body, I'm thinking about, okay, is this going to serve me long term, right? For what the purpose of that meal is going to be for, right? I want you to always think that, okay, if I can't get in, okay, the preferred version, which is real food versus this again, liquid, let's say, then how can I help myself before I drink said liquid that I know is going to take me over the edge? So the 80-20 rule works perfectly, and it's a way to give yourself grace. Again, not just in how you decide what to eat, okay, what meals you're going to prepare or rather eat, but also just in life itself. We're in this marathon. It's unfortunate that it got to this point. I would probably say that fascism has been creeping up since basically Ronald Reagan, and now it's hit the fan, right? So we get to live with it and we get to figure out a way out of it, and sooner than later. And in doing so, we want to stay as healthy as possible so that we can fight and that we can see a better future for not just ourselves, but for those after us. And the 80-20 rule can definitely help you out. So with that, your nourishment, again, it's not about being perfect every single day at every single meal. It's simply deciding, okay, if I think a little bit ahead using the 80-20 rule, I most likely can get 80% of my meals to be preferable versus the 20% that are not necessarily preferable, but will at least give me, even the artificial energy that I'm looking for to get through the day or your waking hours. So with that, hopefully that was helpful to you. But again, 80-20 rule works for just about every part of your life, but especially in nourishment, so you don't feel like you are always on the short end of the stick when it comes to on-demand energy. I want you to fuel your body as best you can and realize that you're not perfect and that you really can more often than not, 80% of the time, make better decisions. Just keeping that in mind. All right. Until next time, take care, take charge. God bless.